Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the European Union Week at TUM School of Management. This year's European Union Week is jointly organized with HEC Paris, and I'm very glad about this. The collaboration with HEC, a premier business school and a very important partner for TUM School of Management, makes this event a truly European one, not just by content, but also by the institutions involved. I should also mention that it's co-organized by TUM Speakers Series, a group of very engaged students who support this event. Thank you. My warmest welcome goes to our distinguished speaker tonight, Monsieur Michel Barnier. Welcome to Munich, welcome to TUM. I also would like to welcome very warmly Pierre Landapad, French Consul General in Munich, and Francois, Collin, Associate Dean of HEC Business School, as well as Gunther Friedl, Dean of TUM School of Management. The reason why this doesn't work, can we somehow forward the slides? Here we go. So, this is our distinguished speaker, Monsieur Michel Barnier, European Chief Negotiator for the UK, exiting the European Union. Okay, can you please go one slide further? And this is my name. I'm Joachim Henkel, Vice Dean of Research at TUM School of Management. Please, one more click. Click. Thank you. So, as I said, this is our distinguished speaker tonight, Mr. Barnier. And the reason why this talk at this time is so exciting is not a very happy reason. This is Brexit. Can you please click? So, Brexit, about 3 years ago, the United Kingdom, with a slight majority, voted for leaving the European Union without really knowing what they were voting for, but it happened anyway. Why did it happen? One more click, please. Thank you. Well, one thing I would say is that it's always easy to blame the European Union. That happens in different countries, that happens a lot in the UK. Please click. To give you just one example, a few years ago when this horrible fire happened in London at this Grenfell Tower, the Express insinuated that EU regulations were the reason for that, which is not the case, but it's always easy to write it. And there is no natural defender of the European Union, which is international in each country. This is, I think, one reason why we have that situation. Can you please click once again? And this is not a UK thing. This advertising here by the German party has no arguments in it whatsoever, just a general accusation that Brussels is doing something not good, and this is against Heimat. No reasons, just polemic. Let's hope it doesn't work. Can you please click once again? So one thing the European Union hopefully needs, I think, I'm convinced, is a stronger lobby in its nation states. One more click, please. Thank you. Now, one other issue is, we talk about Brexit tonight, and we have talked about similar things a lot, we and the press, about inner European struggles. There were some frictions with Poland, there's Hungary, there's Italy. What we're kind of forgetting sometimes is that there's the global scale. Can you please click? And two very good arguments for a strong European Union are the United States and China. Of course, there are many more, but these countries, if we're facing these countries as nations, please click once again. Yes, even the larger European countries like France, click please. Germany, click. That comes with your animation, but no clicker. Or the UK, they're pretty small. Here we go. No. Click, please. The European Union, in contrast, it's on a global scale a balance of power that creates a rather different size compared to the nation states. We sometimes forget that. Click, please. So, the European Union should focus more on its global role. One more click, please. And here's an advertising for another great speaker, certainly less popular than tonight's speaker, but with a very interesting topic, namely Alexander Clarkson from King's College speaking about EU power, the EU as an emerging hegemon. So here we are. Please click. Let me conclude by reminding you, the younger people in the audience, that Brexit partly happened because the younger generation, to a good extent, did not go to the elections, did not vote. So if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. And so I would urge you to vote whatever party you want, but one that is for a strong European Union, because we need it. That said, I'm looking forward to a very exciting evening, and I ask our Dean, Gunther Friedl, to come to stage. Gunther, to address a welcome to the audience and our speakers.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure also for me to welcome you for the starting event of our European Week. And I'm particularly happy that so many of you have joined us for this starting event, knowing that our last 2 years starting events were not that heavily visited. So it's really great to have you all here. We could not have a better demonstration for the fact that the future of Europe is what we are all interested in. And it is no coincidence that the European Week here takes place at the Technical University of Munich, here in the heart of Europe. Our city, Munich, and our university both are the perfect place to experience the benefits of the European Union. Munich is, by the way, one of the most international cities in Germany, with more than 25%, each fourth of the population being non-German national with a foreign citizenship. And most of these internationals are from countries of the European Union. And this is even topped by our students here at TUM, in particular at TUM School of Management. At TUM School of Management, we have constantly increased the share of international students to now more than 30%. Again, most of them from countries of the European Union. I am particularly thrilled that this opening event is a joint event together with one of the most prestigious academic institutions in France. This event would not have been possible without HEC Paris. I'm grateful for the joint organization, and I'm also grateful for the long-lasting partnership that we have with HEC Paris. HEC Paris is the #1 business school in France, and it's even the #1 business school in the world, at least according to Financial Times. We are honored to have you as a partner on our side, Monsieur Collin. We jointly organized this event because we believe that as one of the top academic institutions, we have a responsibility to showcase the benefits and the advantages that Europe has brought to our society. We believe that 70 years of peace and economic growth are inseparably linked to the development of the European unit here in Europe. And I'm particularly grateful that we have one of the most important Europeans here today as the keynote speaker. With Michel Barnier, we do not only welcome a former commissioner of the European Union, a former Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, we probably welcome the most important person for the future development of the European Union. We can welcome a man that has so successfully negotiated the withdrawal agreement with the UK, the Brexit agreement. Successfully managing 28 nations with differing perspectives into one agreement is unprecedented. And since we Germans would have been particularly affected by a no-deal Brexit, we could not do more than saying a sincere thank you for all your efforts that you have put into that agreement within the last years. Thank you. And since I'm not the speaker, let me simply thank you for being here, and let me ask Monsieur Collin to also say a few words of welcome.
Dear Mr. Barnier, dear Mr. Lanapat, dear Dean Friedl and Professor Henkel, dear colleagues, dear students, on behalf of HEC Paris, I would like to express our very great pleasure and pride to co-host this evening tonight and to open the grand conference of the European Week. This evening means a lot to us. First of all, because, as you kindly mentioned, this is a joint event between HEC Paris and TUM, and TUM is our strategic partner in Germany. And beyond that, I think it's a very strong symbol that this week is opened by two academic institutions, one from France and one from Germany. It's clear, obvious, that nobody should ever forget that the two countries are and should be the pillars for a very strong European Union. And in the wake of de Gaulle and Adenauer, Giscard d'Estaing and Helmut Schmidt, the Franco-German friendship means a lot to us. And as true believers of the European constructions, we wish to send a strong signal tonight. But this evening, of course, means a lot to us as well, because our speaker, Michel Barnier, tonight, is one of the most respected and committed defender of the European ambition, a man of passion who has always been fighting for the future of Europe and for you, the younger generations tonight. Europe is going through tough days, obviously, with the Brexit and many more challenges coming up, and we're eager to hear your views tonight and have a chance to create a debate with the students and the younger generations. You may be around 1,000 students in the room tonight here in Munich, but maybe you are just as many around Europe on the HEC campus in Paris and in other academic institutions in Europe through the live broadcasting that we have organized. I would like to tell a very warm thank you to Professor Henkel for having organized this event together with the entire team at the TUM School of Management, and to Olga Hein, the director of the HEC Paris office in Germany. With this word, Mr. Barnier, thank you very much for having accepted our invitation. And please, dear students and guests, please join me in welcoming Michel Barnier tonight. Thank you.
It could be better to applaud just after the speech than before. Huh? Well, students and professors, let me first of all thank you very much for your invitation. Let me thank the TU München and HEC for inviting me at the launch of this joint European Union Week. Thanks to you, Francois, Collin, for your kind words, and Professor Gunther Friedl and Professor Joachim Henkel. I want to say hello also to Monsieur le Consul Général and Frau Vizepräsidentin for your presence, and also to say hello to all the students who attend from abroad in HEC, in Paris, and also in so many multiple other location. I hope sincerely that this week will be the opportunity for you to debate and propose new and innovative projects for Europe. And to be frank, I'm a little bit afraid that my topic today is not the most positive project we have at the moment. Brexit is a lose-lose game. Brexit is a negative negotiation. We regret the decision of a majority of British people, but we respect it, and we have to deliver it. Perhaps just a very first remark to say that the Brexit shows that the EU is not a prison. You can go out of this union taking your responsibility, facing and assuming the consequences of your decision. Perhaps at the very beginning of this speech, let me tell you about two key moments I experienced during the course of these two last years of negotiations. Personal moment, an important moment for me. The first relates to one of my visits in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, 1 year ago, where, you know, in Northern Ireland, less than 22 years, not so far, there was a history of conflict, division, and violence between two communities. It was in a very small village close from Derry and Londonderry. This village is called Dungannon. And I met, at the end of the day, a group of 20 women working together on both sides of the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, UK, working together with the support of the EU law, the EU policies, and the EU budget, in particular the peace program. And I do not forget this meeting because during this meeting, two of these women cried and tell me, please help us so that history does not return. Ladies and gentlemen, Northern Ireland is a place where the risk of the Brexit could be the most dramatic. And this first moment shows one point, that Brexit is not, first of all, about finance, big finance, diplomacy, trade, and so many other things. Brexit is, first of all, about people. The second moment is a very stimulating meeting I had in my office with Mr. Farage. You know Mr. Farage, huh? Nigel Farage. He was 3 years ago at the front line, the main supporter for the Brexit, and as you can see, now he's coming back. And Mr. Farage had this meeting, which was more or less cordial. At the end of the meeting, I asked Mr. Farage one question. You want the Brexit, okay, we are going to deliver the Brexit now. I asked a question about what is your vision about the future of the relation between the UK and the EU after the Brexit, Mr. Farage? Can you tell me, how do you see the future relationship? And his answer was very immediate and clear. The following, Mr. Barnier, after the Brexit, the EU will no longer exist. This is a proof that Brexit is not only about trade, diplomacy, big finance. Brexit is also about politics. The future of Europe, the existing of Europe, which is at stake now. This is the two moments I just want to recall and for you to remember. That is the core and the real substance of the Brexit. Let me now come back to the substance of this negotiation, if I may, just to explain to you where we are and the state of play. Let me first repeat that we all regret the UK decisions, but we have to implement it because it is a sovereign and democratic decision of a majority of the UK citizens. But we regret this decision, first because since it joined in 1973, the UK has largely shaped what the EU is today. Single market, and I can tell you it's true because I have been the commissioner for the single market a few years ago, enlargement, and also many other policies environmental policy, trade policy. Second, because the UK is an important partner to each of our member states, in particular in trade. In Germany, 6% of the trade in goods is with the UK. However, we must see the big picture. 56% of this trade is with other EU countries. That's why most businesses say that our fundamental priority in this negotiation is to preserve the integrity of the single market. And if we need, ladies and gentlemen, if we need a proof of the importance, the key importance of the single market, let me show you one or two slides which are also important for me and perhaps for you. And if I may, if you have to remember only one point of this nice speech tonight, remember of these two slides. The first one is a slide where specific history, because this slide has been published 6 years ago when I was a Commissioner for Internal Market by Mr. Cameron. You remember Mr. Cameron, no? At that time, the Prime Minister of UK. And this slide, published by Mr. Cameron as the Prime Minister of the UK, was just to prove to the UK citizens why the single market is important. And this slide shows the G8 countries and shows that today, among this club of the G8 countries, only 4 European countries are at the table. And what happens due to the growth of the rest of the world, and nobody is waiting for us in the world. Sometimes they hope for us, but nobody is waiting for us. And our own growth, every 10 years, one of the G8 EU members, one of the 4 is putting out of the table or of this slide. I tried to use the same figures, Cameron, and adjust data to show what happens if we stay together, 27, or if we are alone. This is the second one. And this second slide shows that being 27, being together with the support of the single market, we remain at the table, even if we have to be careful. But the UK progressively is excluded of the table. These two slides show one thing. We need to be European, in addition to be German, French, Slovenian, Polish. We must be European in addition. I repeat, in addition, not at the place of being French, German, or Slovenian. Being European in addition to be French or German. Just to be sure to stay at the table where the order or the disorder of the world will be organized. If we want to be actors and not only spectators, we need to be European. That is the proof of these two slides of Mr. Cameron. And this is the context of the Brexit and the decision of the UK to leave the EU and to be alone or outside. In French, to be solitaire plutôt que solidaire. In this context, from the beginning, I wanted to reach a deal with the UK. And for this, there were 2 conditions. Number 1, build and maintain the unity of the 27, as you correctly said a few minutes ago. And this unity, just let me tell you, that is not given by chance. It's not fall from heaven. We have worked with a very unusual method, from the beginning of the negotiation, working in a total transparency, the Commission towards the European Council, the Council of the Head of States, the Council of Ministers, and the European Parliament, saying every day everything to everybody, and including the publication of each and every of our negotiation position on the web immediately, which was and which will remain really unusual. But thanks to this transparency, we have built a relation of confidence and trust between the 27 member states, government, national parliaments, European Parliament, the stakeholders. And I think that this unity proves a common sense of responsibility of the leaders since 2016, but also it can be maintained with transparency and public debate. The second condition is put things in order. And let me show, perhaps it could be a little bit complicated, but many things are complicated in Brussels. But just to simplify, two strands of negotiation. The yellow one is about Brexit, the divorce, which is the first step, the prerequisite. We have to organize in an orderly manner this divorce. Wanted to ask about the UK. The second strand in green is about the future, which is, in my view, much more interesting and much more important after the divorce, to organize and to rebuild a different and other legal and financial and technical framework, the new relation with the UK. So we have worked for 2 years and a half to reach an agreement last November, 6 months ago, with the UK, not against the UK, with the UK, with Mrs. May and her government. We have reached an agreement on the withdrawal agreement about the divorce. At the same time, we agreed with the UK government on what we called it green, the political declaration, which is easier to read, 26 pages. The first one is about 600 pages. The political declaration is much more simple, in my view, so important, describing precisely what would be the future relationship with the UK on several, I will come back on this point, on several sectors. So, this is why we have put things in order. First, the divorce, second, the future relation. And detailed negotiation of the future relationship can only start once we have an agreement on the separation. It is a legal point, but important point. We cannot begin official negotiation about trade and many other sectors with a member state of the Union. We have to wait, the UK leave officially the EU to begin a future negotiation on our partnership. And among separation issues, we insisted on reaching first sufficient progress on 3 priority issues: citizens' rights, perhaps your rights as students, the financial settlement, and Ireland. And with this method, the EU leaders and the UK agreed so in November on a very detailed withdrawal agreement. Let me give you some telegraphically some ideas of what is the substance of this 600 pages treaty. First, the citizen rights. We are speaking about 4.5 million, perhaps 5 million citizens. 3.5 European citizens living, working, studying in UK, and in the other sense, 1.5 British citizens living and working in one of the 27 EU countries. The point for all the citizens is to secure their rights, their residence rights, their social rights, and what we agreed with the UK is clearly to secure all rights of these people, 5 million people, for the duration of their life, for themselves and for their families. All the rights acquired from the past until the end of 2020. This is the first priority agreed with the UK. The second point is about the financial settlement. You have to know or to recall that the European budget is built not as the national or local or regional budget on 1 year, but the European budget is built for 7 years, and what we call the pluri-annual budgetary period, 2014 until the end of 2020, 2021 until the end of 2028. So, the reality is that at the beginning of this current period, 2014, UK and the 27 other countries agreed on the policies for 7 years and on the budgets supporting these policies. Agriculture policy, university cooperation, structural funds and cohesion, research and so on. And my point was in the beginning of the negotiation, which is a very key point, just to agree with the Brits that everything decided at the beginning at 28 will be paid at 28. And it is a point agreed finally with the UK. We had many other separation issues. I often say that all the consequences of Brexit have been generally underestimated, not only in the UK, but everywhere. And the Brexit has so many consequences, social and human consequences, as I mentioned, for the citizen rights, but also legal and technical consequences, financial and economic consequences. So we have tried to put, again, legal certainty where the Brexit creates so many legal uncertainty for so many people. This is the reason why this treaty is about 600 pages. For instance, the UK leaving the EU, leaves automatically, mechanically, 700 international agreements. All the trade agreements, the fishery, aviation, Euratom, Europol, and so on, with so many consequences. I mentioned Euratom, which is a key issue, but also the protection of personnel data, the protection of 1 million trademarks. For the very beginning of the single market, we protect together, the 28 today, all the trademarks for the businesses, small and big businesses, protected together. The same for the protection of 3,000 geographical indications, protecting local products for agriculture. For instance, in this region, the Münchener beer, which is quite famous, or the Scotch whiskey, just to say two examples of what we call the geographic indications. We have also agreed on governance issue. We agreed on a very key point, which is what we call the transition period, asked by the UK, request by the UK. That means that from the day one after the Brexit until the end of 2020, or even 2022, could be 4 years, during which the statu quo, the economic and political statu quo will be maintained. That means that the UK leaves, the day of the Brexit, all the institutions. It leaves the Commission, the European Parliament, the Council, the Court of Justice, and so on, but it will remain in the single market and the custom union. And it gives us time on both sides to prepare, in particular for the administration in the UK, which has been to be rebuilt in many sectors, or the businesses, also for our own preparation for our businesses. And it gives us time, both of the parties, to negotiate the future relationship while giving stability to businesses. The main point of negotiation, which is the most sensible, I mentioned this point at the beginning of my speech, is the island and Northern Ireland. Why? Because in this region, once again, we are not speaking only about trade and customs, but first of all about peace, stability, and people. And the fact is that on the island of Ireland, there are today two countries, the Republic of Ireland and UK, with Northern Ireland. Due to the past and the very difficult history between these two countries, in particular Northern Ireland, since 20 years, exactly 20 years, the peace has been rebuilt and the stability has been maintained thanks to agreement, what we called the Good Friday Agreement between the two communities, with the support of the United Nations, the support of the British government, obviously the support of the Irish government, and also the support of the European Union, thanks to its law, the budget, and our policies. And for the last 20 years, everything is okay. Because these two countries, the UK and the Republic of Ireland, are both members of the same union, the same single market, the same custom union. The day when a part of the island leaves the custom union, and leave the union, and leave the single market, we have a problem. To protect, obviously, the Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions, and also to protect and preserve the integrity of the single market. Should this solution not be in place at the end of the transition period, 2020 or 2022, we have agreed on an insurance policy, what we call a backstop. So that means that we agree with the Brits to work together through the future relation to find a solution to avoid a border. We cannot rebuild a border in Northern Ireland between the two countries, but we have to implement controls and to safeguard and to save the Good Friday Agreement. So that means that until and unless we find a solution thanks to the future relationship or specific agreement, we have planned this backstop, which means the alignment of Northern Ireland on some EU rules, for instance, for the veterinary rules. Never forget that this island is a unique and single epidemiology zone, and also a single customs territory for the whole UK, which would make some controls unnecessary, even if other controls would remain. This point is important for you, because you are working, or you will work in many sectors of the industry and the trade and so on. And what is at stake is clearly the protection of the single market and the consumers of the EU and the business of the EU. Let me show you what are the different types. I recognize that this slide is a little bit bureaucratic, but it's precise, showing what are the three types of controls that the EU implement everywhere, at each and every external border of the EU. South of Greece, south of Portugal, north of Finland, of Poland, and obviously in North Ireland. At each and every EU external border, we protect the consumers, the budget, and the businesses through three types of controls. On the left, the controls to protect the consumers, to protect you against the animal disease, to control the vegetables, to check the food security standards, among many other controls. In the middle, controls to protect the budget, through the control of the custom duties and the VAT. I'm speaking about the national budget and the European budget. And the last one, on the right, controls to protect the businesses against the counterfeiting, to be sure to check the norms and standards for each product entering in the single market. That is the point we have to solve in Northern Ireland. To implement this control, because the limit of the single market will be clearly in the middle of the island without rebuilding a border. That is the reason why this backstop as an insurance, clearly exactly as the insurance you have for your own house, and the negotiation to find a solution to avoid a border thanks to the future relation is so important. That is the content and the substance of this agreement on the divorce and the main points of the substance of this withdrawal agreement. The second part of the package, agreed with Mrs. May, is about the future relation. And in my view, this part is much more important. We have to rebuild with other tools, other legal framework, this relation with the UK, because the UK will remain in any case a great country, close from us, a partner, an ally, and a friend. So we agreed with the Brits on the content of this political declaration describing the future relationship. 4 pillars on 4 sectors composing the future relationship. The first one on trade and economy and fishery. The second one about sectorial agreement for instance, the aviation. UK will leave mechanically the single sky. We have to rebuild a new relation just for the British planes to be able to land or to, and our also planes to land in UK. Transport, mobility of citizens, cooperation between university, Erasmus, so many sectors where we need to rebuild and to negotiate new agreements with the UK. The third one is about police and justice cooperation. And the last one, key point, is about defense, security, and external policy. And if you take the time of reading these 26 pages, which are, once again, easier to read than the withdrawal agreement, you can find many points where we agreed to work with the UK during the negotiation we will have to launch immediately, the day after the ratification of the withdrawal agreement. And we want this very ambitious future relationship. Let me come back on the first sector, which is about trade and economy, with my famous slide about the stairs. There is no copyright on this slide. Just to show what are the different kinds of relation, economic relation we had together today, the current relation we have with many third countries. This slide shows one thing which is important for everybody to know, that it is that in any case, the best relation with the EU, will remain to be member of the EU. It's not always an evidence for everybody, but I just to recall this point. The second best is what we call the Norwegian regime, the Norwegian model. Norway is not part of the EU, but it's part of the single market. And that means that there is no two markets side by side. The Norwegian market, the internal Norwegian market, is part of the single market of the EU. And from step to step, we are going to the last one, which is simply, not negligible, but simply a free trade agreement, exactly the same kind of agreement we reached 2 years ago with Canada, a few weeks ago with Japan or South Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, these stairs you can climb down, the case of the UK government today. You can also climb back up if you wish. And on the second part of this slide, I just mentioned what are the UK red lines, not our red lines, their red lines. What Mrs. May, in the name of the British government, told us from the very beginning. She told us we don't want to recognize the role of the Court of Justice. We don't want to pay. We don't want to respect the freedom of movement for the people. We don't want to recognize and to respect the regulatory framework of the single market. And finally, we don't want to be part of your trade policy. We want to be autonomous, and we want to get back control of our trade sovereignty. Okay. So we have respect all along this negotiation, these red lines. But because of these red lines, the UK itself closed the door one by one and climbed down until the last step of this slide. So we are ready to improve this type of relations. We are ready to improve the political declaration, and it is why the current cross-party negotiation between the Labour Party, Mr. Corbyn, and Mrs. May are so important. These cross-party talks on future are ongoing in London, and we are hoping, I am hoping, to see the results soon. And as we have always said, should the UK be prepared to change one or several of their red lines and wish for a more ambitious future relationship, we are immediately ready to consider this. The only thing that is not possible is to have the benefits of Norway with the level of obligation of Korea. Why? Simply because our single market is our main economic common good. It allows talent and knowledge to move freely between the countries. It allows our businesses to offer products and services in other EU countries as if they were in their own market. It gives us also the size to negotiate FTAs with third countries, for instance Japan, and help businesses export. And finally, it allows us to spread our rules and standards all around the world. Let me just mention one point, which is not always quite well understood in the UK. The single market is not only a free trade zone. It is a supermarket, but not only. The single market, as we built it with the UK for the last 44 years, is in fact an ecosystem. The same norms, the same standards for the products, the same certification, in many sectors, the same rights, for instance, for the protection of the consumers, the same regulation in many sectors, the same supervision, in particular for the financial services, and on top of that, the same jurisdiction, the Court of Justice. That is the single market. It's the reason why you can have, being a third country, one foot inside and one foot outside. It's impossible. And in the same time, we have to be fair with our businesses and to be fair with our consumers and citizens. So that is the point. And after the Brexit, obviously the 27 will keep the advantages of being part of the single market and of the EU. So that is the point I can just mention about the state of play of the negotiations, the content of the negotiations. Perhaps just to prove that Barnier Brexit, I'm able to speak many other things than Brexit. And just let me conclude in the second part of this speech about some of the other issues and the other challenges we have to face together in a very specific situation in the world. Let me just recall one of the challenges, which is the demographic challenges. And also to put again this slide, hoping that you will remember this slide at the key point of my speech once again. Let's be honest when we look at the world around us. We are an aging society and a shrinking part of the world. Only together we will stay in the top 8 world economy, and only together can we face today big challenges. The truth is that while the world is being speeding onwards, Europe has been looking far too much inwards. Yes, it is a banner put on by Greenpeace on one of the buildings in Brussels a few weeks ago. No need to comment. Let me mention 4 of the challenges, if I can ask for your attention a few minutes more. The first one, and it is a very strong and old conviction on my side. I have been the French Minister for Environment. I have published several books on these challenges. The first one is the need to build a Green EU deal, to paraphrase the Green New Deal movement in the US. We cannot longer afford to waste time. Look at this image on the left from the Arctic cycle in Sweden. Temperatures are rising, the ice cap is melting, our forests are burning. But also about biodiversity. Bees and other insects are disappearing. The WWF Fund says we have lost 60% of species since 1970. There is microplastic pollution everywhere, from our fields and oceans to our food. But we will not save the environment without climate justice. Europe must be the place where ambitions for the environment can support an industrial strategy, new jobs, and social justice. For this, in my view, there are 3 priorities. Number 1, becoming the first carbon-neutral economy by mid-century, investing in the energy renovation of buildings, and becoming the leading continent for electric cars by 2030. Number 2, reducing our net consumption of resources and becoming a truly circular economy through a plan to find, for instance, the planned obsolescence of our phones. And number 3, better protecting biodiversity and opening a real debate with, not against, with our farmers. This is the first challenge we have to face together. The second is to strengthen our economy. In fact, out of the top 20 tech companies worldwide, today 11 are now American, the remaining 9 are Chinese. If we do not want the future of industry, jobs, personal data, and ethical standards to be made in Washington or in Beijing, we need, once again, to act together now on investment, regulation, public-private partnership, and skills. For instance, just one example, Finland set itself the objective to train 1% of its population in artificial intelligence skills in the next 3 or 5 years. Now Sweden and the Netherlands are doing the same. Why not do the same at the European level? There are just 300,000 AI practitioners worldwide, while the demand is well into the millions. Such an ambitious mission for upskilling Europe can create the largest pool of AI talent in the world. Just before coming in your university here and meeting you, I just met today with the CEO of BMW, who confirms to me their need for skills. Of course, our industrial and investment strategy must go well beyond digital technologies and artificial intelligence. Our SMEs, our Mittelstand, remain the backbone of our economy. They need to thrive in an economic environment where open and fair competition remains assured. But let me just end on this point, that we must not be naive. We cannot be the only to have open markets and follow the rules of the game. We need to stand up together to US and China, stand up against state subsidies and takeovers in strategic sector, forced technological transfers, and extraterritorial rulings, retaliation, and escalation. And we need to invest together, as we started to do with the Juncker plan for the last 4 years. We need to do more, as for instance the joint German-French initiative for an Airbus of batteries, 1.2 billion euros to not be left behind in the race for the 4th generation of batteries. This is the second challenge we have to face together. Third, if we look at the threats challenging our continent, we cannot longer afford to outsource our security. Never has the United States been so clear about the necessity for Europe to take its security into its own hands. Ladies and gentlemen, in that sector also, security defense, we must be capable. Nobody will do for us what we do not do for ourselves. Nobody. Contrary to common beliefs, we are the continent that invests the most in defense after the United States. But we do so in a piecemeal fashion. In Europe, we produce 17 different types of tanks, when the United States produces only one type. The same for another program of frigates. 6 parallel programs of frigates has been launched in Europe. In the United States, only one. Military duplication comes with a huge cost, 20 billion each year. We remain dependent of third countries for critical equipment, such as drones and strategic airlift. And this must change. This is the third challenge we have to face together. And the last one today is about the migration. Yet, ladies and gentlemen, it is true, the number of migrants attempting to reach Europe has dropped dramatically since 2015. But when you look at the situation in Libya, Syria, and elsewhere, in particular all around the Mediterranean, it would be wrong to think that this challenge is behind us. And we know that climate change refugees could reach as many as 200 million by mid-century. We have no other choice but to develop a comprehensive policy and toolbox to take control of migration and asylum flows towards Europe. Better controlling our borders with the setting up of a new European border and coast guards, 10,000 new posts going to be created on the proposal of the Commission, and the dismantling of smuggling networks. But we also need to review our asylum and migration rules to make sure we protect those who are in the right of protection and that we send back those who do not have the right to stay. We also need to develop solidarity mechanism for those member states that are the most impacted or take the bigger share of the burden. And last but not least, we need to develop a true and strong partnership with Africa. Africa will host 2.5 billion inhabitants by mid-century, 2.5 billion, half of them below 18 years old, half of them, and only 15 kilometers away from Europe. And if we think Africa's future does not concern us, we are wrong. Friends and ladies and gentlemen, taking up these four challenges will not always be easy. Decision-making at EU level can be complex, and in fact is complex. It requires compromise, dynamic compromise, and determination. Let me show just the last slide about the meeting of the European Council. I took part of this meeting. Here on the left, on the side of Jean-Claude Juncker, speaking about Brexit. But not only to show the people around the table, but different colors. This meeting is only possible because all around the table of the head of states and the prime ministers, there are 24 booths for interpreters, translating immediately in 23 other languages when you speak in French or in German. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a price, these booths of interpreters, this is a price to pay to preserve the national identities. We are working, this is a key point for me, and I hope for you, we are working for a united Europe, not for uniform Europe. And this is the price to pay, protecting the diversity and building the unity. But our best chance to meet our objective, once again, is to act together. Together, we are a union of values, human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. This is the heart of our union, what must unite us as Europeans. Together, even without the UK, we are a single market of 440 million citizens and consumers and 22 million businesses. Together, we have the size to negotiate ambitious trade deals with major world economies while ensuring that trade is fair. Together, with all our national and regional specificities, we have the most protective and efficient social model in the world, even through, obviously, perfectible. Together, we have the capacity to invent and to defend new common European goods, from climate and security to university networks, which are bigger than the individual capacity of action of our single member states. So I just come to my conclusion, thanking to you for your attention. You are, for the youngest in this room, part of a generation of Europeans who live in peace, a freedom as no other generation before it. Let us not forget that these achievements are still fragile. Sudden reversals are possible. They are even thought after by many political parties in each of our countries. Do not let Mr. Farage score his point. There are many, many Farage everywhere. If you want to preserve these achievements, this unique way of life in the world, take care of Europe. Take care of Europe. Do not accept the statu quo. Share and defend your vision of Europe. Whatever your ideas, get involved, especially in the coming debate for the European elections. And let me tell you, because I am involved in politics since I have been 15 years, a long time ago, if you don't engage with politics, if you don't yourself engage in politics, it is politics that engage and interferes with you. This is a message that was recently delivered in Berlin by the President of the United States. Not the current one, the one just before. And I may add to what President Obama said in Berlin that day, if I may, your clothes are less important than your future. So whatever your area of responsibility, now or in the coming months or years, in business, in public service, in education, or in the voluntary sector, keep on getting involved and defending what you believe in. That is my final word. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Barnier, thank you very, very much for this exciting and very interesting and important speech. We have now time for a round of questions. We have a panel, students from HEC and TUM, and afterwards we have time for questions from the audience. May I ask the panel participants to come on stage? And if you could take a seat in the middle, of course. Okay. Thank you very much.
Bonjour.
So, it works. Again, thank you so much. Before we start with questions, I would like to just briefly go around and panel participants introducing themselves. Anna, would you like to start and we just go around?
Works, fantastic. So thank you very much for a fantastic and interesting speech. My name is Hanna Milanov. I'm a professor here on international entrepreneurship and in a way a testament and thanks to the European Union. I'm originally from Croatia and had my career developed around Europe, so it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Michel Barnier. I'm a PhD student. My name is Andrea Deutsch, and I'm a PhD student from the Chair of Management Accounting. Thank you very much for your speech.
I'm Julie Dazan. I'm both French and German, and I'm currently doing the double degree between HEC and the TUM School of Management. And I wanted to thank you for that speech, and I'm very happy to be here and to have the chance to meet you.
I'm Antoni Sikorski. I'm both Polish and German, so I'm very passionate about Europe. I'm a TU student and yeah, welcome to TU Munich. Thank you very much for your speech.
Yes, hello, my name is Christian Misiska. I'm studying also in a double degree with HEC and TUM. And I also have a really special relationship with the European Union. I have 3 European nationalities, the German, the Polish, and the Italian. And so I'm really happy to be here today to discuss about the challenges and the future about the Union.
Thank you. So really a representation of the European Union here on stage. I think you have prepared questions. We maybe should start with questions that address Brexit more specifically, and then, like in the talk of our speaker, come to more general questions. I think your point was the more specific one.
Yes, so now, as we all know, Brexit comes from drawbacks for both the UK but also the EU 27. So, for example, Germany alone exports 80 billion euro of goods and services to UK each year. So, did you find it difficult to take into consideration these economic concerns without weakening the strong EU 27's negotiation power? And how did you manage to take these 2 aspects into consideration?
That works. Mr. Sikorski, it's a good question, but let me recall one point I mentioned in the beginning of my speech. Brexit is a lose-lose game. There is no winner. There will be no winner. The reason why I regret this vote, even if we have to respect it. And let me, how old are you?
24.
24. I vote in my personal life for the first time when I was 21. Remember in France at that time it was the age of vote was 21, not 18, and it was a long time ago in 72, and we had at that time a referendum in France, decided by the French president for the accession, for the people, for the French people to vote for the accession of the UK, Denmark, Norway, and Ireland. And despite the fact I was at that time, still am a member of the Gaullist party, I campaigned for the yes, because I think that being strong, being united, means that we are stronger together. So that means today, first for the economy, but also for the politics, that the Brexit is weakening all of us, the UK and ourselves. Depending on the kind of relation the UK wants to have with us, is it basically a free trade agreement, as I mentioned in the slide, in my stairs, or it could be more, free trade agreement plus a custom union, depending on the result of the negotiation between the Labour and the government. The impact will be stronger or less strong for the businesses. But it cannot be business as usual. I have to tell the truth. It's my role to tell the truth. Brexit means that it cannot be business as usual. For instance, in any case, we have to control the standards and the norms for the products entering in the single market. So that is the point. Obviously, we are weaker if we are separate, but to be frank also and to be clear, we will remain the 27 with our market, the same, what I call this ecosystem will remain the same. 440 million consumers and 22 billion businesses, we will remain with this solid and strong base, which is our single market. The main reason why we are respected in the world, the main reason is the single market. Because one US business entering in Poland, in your country, respecting the rules of regulations, EU supervision, is mechanically, immediately entering in a market of 440 million consumers. That is the point. We have to protect. It is our main, it's not a question of punishment or revenge vis-à-vis the UK. It's just the fact that we cannot accept to unravel and to fragilize what is our and what remain our main asset for the future. We cannot. We cannot.
Who would like to go next? Ladies.
You mentioned international competition as one of the main...
The what?
International competition as one of the main economic challenges the European Union will face. I'd like to focus a bit more on that point. In February of this year, the European Commission blocked a plan of merger between Siemens Mobility and Alstom based on EU competition law. And this plan of merger was seen by many as a way to create European champions of the one European champion of the railway industry to better face the Chinese competition in particular. So my question is, do you think that having European champions of industry and having a common European industry policy is desirable, and should the EU competition law be changed to make that possible?
This is also a key question. Let me first say, looking at what makes the success of Germany, for instance, where we are, and not only in this region, but every and each land, that the key of the success of Germany is linked to, obviously, champion in car, automobile, and insurance company, and so on, but also thanks to so many small and medium companies. The Mittelstand in this country means something strong. It's not everywhere the case. And I can regret in my own country, for many of you in France, that we have abandoned, not support, as Germany made, our medium and small companies. Because you can find champion among the small and medium companies. And there are many, many examples of worldwide champion belonging to this sector of the small and medium companies. So this is the first remark. The second one is, I understand the feeling of the trouble created by the decision of the Commission. The Commission is a guardian of the treaty. And I don't want to keep myself to the treaty, but we have to respect the treaty. And this treaty is also a treaty which protect the businesses against the unfair competition, the state aid, what I mentioned in my speech, in some sector. So I think that the decision taken by the Commission cannot be another one in the current framework of the competition laws. And once again, the competition laws protect the European business against abuses and unfair competition. So that means that if something has to be made, is to create, thanks to dialogue between the member states, the European Parliament, the national parliaments, what could be a new strategy for the industry to address your point and to be able to interpret or to use the competition laws and the state aids with a goal to protect and to create what you call the champions in some sector. And until and unless we get this new strategy for industry, and I listened German Minister for Economy, the French Minister for Economy, speaking the same sense. For instance, what had been just made a few days ago between the two countries, our two countries, to create a sector, a common sector for the industry of batteries is key. I think it's the right things to do. And we have, for that kind of policy, and for that kind of common investment, we do not need a change of the treaty. We have just to act, to decide together. But what had been decided for the battery sector is key for our independence and the European autonomy. That is the point. But to answer to your point, I think that in the next few weeks or months or years, we have to think and to work together, taking into account the Mittelstand, taking into account the SME sector, which is key, not against it, what could be a new industrial strategy for Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we move on.
You've elaborated a lot on your vision or the future of the EU in your speech. And my question would be, in your view, like what or how would your vision of the EU be, and which major changes should be done maybe to the design of the EU to get to your vision of the EU in maybe 20 or 30 years?
I don't want to come back on my speech. I've taken care of what I said on these 4 big sectors, which are in fact the sector for the next 20 years of in the same time, what I can call the sovereignty of Europe and the proximity with the citizens. Green Europe, Green New Deal, migration, economy, and in particular facing the technological war, and finally defense and security. These are the 4 sectors of, in the same time, European sovereignty or independence and proximity with the citizens. That is my vision. This point is also important to say a few words to you because you are citizens. And we have to take into account the feeling of the citizens. During the last 2 or 3 years, obviously I spent my time to manage these extraordinary and complex negotiations, but I took some time to try to understand and to listen and to understand why 52% of the British citizens vote against Europe. And it is important to take this time. Because this fear, this opposition to the Europe construction is exactly the same in many of our regions in Europe. In France, Belgium, in Italy, you can find very easily the same kind of feelings. And please don't confuse the popular sentiment with the populism. The populism use the popular sentiment. But we have to listen, to understand, to address, and to respond to the popular sentiment, which is this fear to be abandoned by so many people in the poorest region, where there is no future because there is no longer any kind of industry. The sentiment not to be enough protected by Europe. We have to understand. Let me just elaborate one point. I take some time to understand what is the socio-political and economic situation in some region of France where Mrs. Le Pen reached somewhere more or less 45, sometimes more, % of the voters. The extreme right. Why? And what we looked at is quite important and interesting. There is 4 curves following the same line. The first one is a vote for Mrs. Le Pen. The second one, following the first one, is the curve of unemployment. The third one is the curve showing the distance from your house to a doctor. And the last one is the curve showing the distance from your house to a railway station. we have to understand what that means. And we have to answer at each and every level. There is answers at the European level, being less naive, investing together for the future, protecting some part of the industry, and so on. There is national answers. Nobody asked in Brussels to France and to UK to abandon a part of our industry. Germany has not abandoned its industry, nor Sweden or Italy. There are regional answers for the transport, public transport, or local answers for internet or for what we call the short link for agriculture. So there are answers, but we have to understand. And coming back to your question, my answer, these 4 chapters of sovereignty and proximity has to be built in the next 5 or 10 years, taking into account the answers we need to bring right now to the peoples, to avoid this kind of fears and to avoid to give munitions or materials to the population.
Thank
Sorry
you so
to have
much.
been a little bit too long, but...
I think that was a very important question and a very important answer. And I very much like your distinction between popular sentiment and populism. And I am pretty sure, and that is also confirmed both in the UK but also in the United States elections, that these curves or these correlations with unemployment, distance to a doctor or railway station, that if you add education, that's also negatively correlated. My question would build on that one and asking, I mean, for us here, probably for most of us in the audience, certainly for me as an academic, the European Union is without doubt a great thing because we are experiencing many of the benefits. The fact alone that we have an exchange here and we have guests from HEC attests to that. Not everyone benefits or perceives the benefits that he or she gets from the EU so much. For one reason, maybe because of language barriers. If you don't speak a foreign language, it's hard to speak with somebody else in a different country who doesn't speak your language. Do you have any thoughts on that? How to bring the benefits of the EU more experienceable also to people living further away from the railway station, etc.?
Yes, but the answer is not only about communication. No? It's not only about communication. No? The right answer is about new policy, change and reform. And for the EU, as Jean-Claude Juncker with its Commission began to do for the last 5 years, to reduce the number of laws at the European levels. This is one part of the answer, to do more for the big things and to do less for the small things. Huh? Number 2, to focus on the reforms, the policies, the competences where the EU has clearly an added value for the people. And what I tried to do in my speech and what I tried to take part as engaged citizens to the public debate all along this campaign. I'm not a candidate, but I try to take part. It's my role, it's my responsibility to take part and to say what I think to the people. It's to find the key challenges where we have this capacity to prove and to bring the added value of the EU. Because in none of these challenges we are able now to act alone. If we act alone, we are out. Remember my favorite Cameron slide. If we act alone, we are out of the table. We begin definitively spectators of our own future, our own destiny. And I'm not engaged in politics to be a spectator. Huh? We have to be actors. So that the only way to be actors in the current world, and this world is becoming more and more dangerous, unstable, unfair, and just, we have to act together to protect our social and economic model, to protect our corpus of rights and law and democracy, and to protect our interest, the world. Huh?
Thank you. Anna, would you like to?
Thank you very much. I think it's in a way a spin on a similar question. So I think both in the tweets, so in the reception of the audience, and here in one way or another, there's sort of this floating word of supra-identity on a European level. And in your 4 challenges, identity was not something that was mentioned as a challenge. And in the light of Brexit, and maybe some of the lessons we've learned about how to ask questions in a referendum, my question is, perhaps you know something that could give us more hope, why there is a hope for a European identity 30 years from now? Or is there something that we have to actively work on, like Professor Henkel said, we need a lobby for EU within each of the countries, etc. Any thoughts on that?
I think that we have to make and to make again every day the proof of Europe. The proof of Europe. It's not enough to speak about the past, the peace, the promise which had been taken at the very beginning in 15, and to be frank, this promise has been respected all along these 60 years. But it's not enough to speak about the proofs of the past. We have to prove that we need to be together and to remain together for the future and to face these challenges. Because looking at internet, the technological war, climate change, this huge and strong move on migrations, we are in a new world. We cannot only speak about the proof of the past, but you use a very important word, which is identity. I think the European identity is built on the 28, in a few times 27 national and sometimes regional identities. And we have to find a way to build on this diversity and to respect it, because I agree with you, if it is behind your question, that among the fears of the people, perhaps explaining the increase of the populism, there is also this fear about our own identity in the world. Not only in the eastern part of the EU, we have to say and to prove and to repeat that EU, to be clear, we are not building, and I don't want for us to build a European state. We are not building a European nation. There is not only a single people. There is not only a single nation. There is 28 European nations, European states, and each of them wants that its identity being respected by the others. In the case in Germany, in the case in Bavaria, in the case in France. And so the reason why the EU is so complex, because pooling these 28 nations and not building a single nation, respecting the diversity and the differences between these nations, means that it is obviously complex. And if I may, we have to explain and to assume this complexity, because this complexity is the price to pay, as I show you with the interpreters, the price to pay to be respected in its own personality and own identity. We are working for united Europe, not a uniform Europe. This is my point.
Thank you. So it's kind of a straddle, right, between European identity built from diversity. Interesting, but doable, it seems, as this panel kind of attests to. Would you like to go next?
So, Mr. Barnier, I have the feeling that in more...
We have a triple identity.
Yes,
yeah,
German, Italian, and
sure.
Polish. I have the feeling that in more and more countries, the blame for bad state policy is always being passed on to the European Union.
Sure.
In Italy, the government is pointing at the EU because of its debt level restrictions. In Hungary and in Poland, and most recently also in the UK, the scapegoat is always the EU. And my question is, why is this, and most importantly, how can we change it? Because I think it's also important for the upcoming elections.
I come back to my previous answer. I think in that case, the large part of the answer is through democracy, through the public debate. We cannot leave the stage and the micro to the populist. We have to walk on the middle of the road. We have to explain, we have to confront, not to be afraid by the confrontation. I've been never, even with Mr. Farage and some others, and Mrs. Le Pen, I've never been afraid to confront my view with theirs. The worst for the EU, for the Europe, not for the EU, for the Europe, the worst situation is the silence. Because the silence, the fears, and what we call the demagogy can increase everywhere. And a very important statement for me, which is the reason for my personal involvement in politics, was the General de Gaulle, a long time ago. And de Gaulle, in one of his speeches, said, you have to fight against demagogy with democracy, through democracy. Fighting against demagogy through democracy. So we have to open the debate and to confront everywhere and to say the truth. There are some mistakes. There have been many mistakes at the European level. Too much perhaps bureaucracy, not enough democracy. Sometimes on the substance. Huge mistake. For instance, I have been the commissioner during 5 years for the financial services, in the heart of the crisis, from 2010 until 2014. And this crisis had and still have so many consequences. Millions of jobs lost. And a large part of the fears I mentioned in Ireland and some are linked to this financial crisis. And why this crisis had been so huge and so severe and so many consequences for us? Because during 30 years, we have given too much place what we call the ultraliberalism. We have dismantled too much the regulations, the global governance. And the proof is that just after the crisis in 2008 and 2009, we have been obliged, thanks to the G20 roadmap, to rebuild the architecture of regulations. And I have proposed, as a commissioner, 41 new regulations to implement new regulations, supervision, control, transparency on each sector, in each actor, each product of the financial services. I am a liberal, clearly, for a long time, but it's not the same to be ultra-liberal and to think that everything can be left to the freedom for anybody to do what he wants. We have to the liberalism goes with some rules of governance, transparency, and responsibility. That's it. So I have no problem in the public debate to recognize some mistakes of the EU, to be clear. But we have also to defend what is good, what is positive, what has been done, and to protect this common capacity to act. Because remember, there is many people inside Europe, not only Mr. Farage, and outside of Europe, who want to destroy us. Be careful.
Thank you. I would totally agree personally that it's good to have these regulations, not to be ultra-liberal. The downside might be that it invites critics to say, well, there's even more complexity in Brussels. This is probably the balance you have to strike and the Commission has to strike. We have time now for questions from the audience. And there's a large audience, but I hear one question there. We have somebody with a microphone, right? There's a microphone coming.
Good evening. Thank you for your inspiring talk. I've got a question regarding Brexit. And I think we all know that the withdrawal agreement was rejected 3 times, 4 times in Westminster. But any future relationship, no matter how close it is, relies on the withdrawal agreement to be passed by Parliament. So what is your prediction, what is your forecast, what is going to happen? No deal on Halloween, or that it will pass, or no Brexit at all? What do you think is going to happen in the near future?
You speak about prediction, could be a kind of speculation. I don't like speculation. But it's not easy for me to answer because I am the EU negotiator and I don't want to comment. I have no right to be frank with you. I have no right to comment the domestic and internal policy of UK. It would not be fair from my side. I have obviously personal opinions of what happened. I think when I look at the British politics, it's very stimulating. But I don't want to comment. The 3 options now are an orderly withdrawal. It would be the best issue. We have prepared, together with the UK government, this orderly withdrawal. And once again, let me repeat, if the UK still want to leave, if the UK still want to leave in an orderly manner, this treaty is the only one useful. Because we have worked on this treaty with the UK government on an objective base without any kind of aggressivity or punishment feeling or revenge. We have worked on an objective way, taking into account the red lines of the UK and our principles, protection of the single market, protection, indivisibility of the 4 freedoms, and the autonomy of the decision of the 27. So we have worked seriously and rigorously with the UK, and this treaty is the only one possible, if the UK still want to live in an orderly manner. The second option is a no deal. That means leaving the EU without a deal, what we call the cliff edge, the hard Brexit. And I listened some UK leaders asking for this kind of Brexit. It's not definitively, it's not my option. And the third option could be no Brexit. But once again, the choice is the UK choice now, not our choice. We cannot make this choice at their place. We cannot. If they change 1 or 2 of the red lines, I mentioned on my stairs table, we are immediately ready to change our offer and to increase and to improve and to put more ambitious in this. But it's now for the UK Parliament to decide. And perhaps this crisis is much more serious than the crisis about the Brexit in this country. It's perhaps a crisis about what will become the UK, what is the future relation for the UK vis-à-vis the rest of the world, vis-à-vis the Union. So this is important existential questions, and we have to respect this debate. But now the ball is in the UK court, not in our court.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question. I may build on that and ask for a shorter version. Do the local elections, and maybe just a brief answer, do you think the local elections in Britain, where the Conservatives lost a lot of seats locally, does that have an impact on how negotiations will go, on the process at least?
Once again, I don't want to comment.
Okay.
But clearly,
good.
But just clearly, it's clear that for the Labour Party on one side, for the Tory, this local election have an importance, I think.
Thank you. So maybe we should also, in the interest of time, pool 3 questions, if that is okay with you,
yes.
Mr. Barnier? So, if you could
I can spend
go
the
first.
night, if you want.
Good evening, Mr. Barnier. Thank you for your talk. A question about Brexit again. You've described it as a lose-lose situation for both sides. What is it then, in your opinion, that Nigel Farage and the so-called European Research Group actually hope to gain?
Thank you. There was another one somewhere there. Oh, here the...
Just let me ask, just to understand your question. You speak about the ERG group, and what is your question? What does they have to gain? Is that the question? Yes, I will answer this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, if I could ask you to look back to the negotiating period. You mentioned that your team's strategy was very much transparency, and you've enjoyed then a high level of unity in the 27. By contrast, I think the UK negotiating team were not transparent at all, and and they've now found that they don't have the unity that they need to politically move forward. Was this possibility acknowledged or raised at any point during the UK-EU negotiations?
What? Just can you repeat the last point? What?
Was it acknowledged or raised during the negotiations?
The difference of method of unity?
Well, that the chance that the UK government would not have the support that they needed.
Thank you. And maybe a third one. There's one gentleman over there, higher up. Yes. Check out black and white shirt.
Thank you, Monsieur Barnier. I was asking, I'm from Sweden, a country that has taken in a lot of refugees, just like Germany and Denmark and Norway. You said it very well that you were saying that you want a Europe united in diversity, not a uniform Europe. With the migration policies right now, which is so different between all the countries, what do you think will be the main solution to this migration problem that we have right now, or had in the past, and maybe probably will have again in the future?
So, on the last question, we have been the first one in the last 4 years. The main crisis after the financial crisis, I tried to elaborate some roads to tackle this issue of the migrations in a human, with dignity and also efficiency the next 10 years, because I think that the crisis and the challenge is not behind us. And we have to prevent, in particular through what the President Juncker called an alliance, could be a plan or a very new partnership between EU and Africa, tackling many policies, not only the control of migrants, but also the return of many of them, but also development, the peace and the stability in these regions. So I try to elaborate, if you come back in my speech, and you can also read a speech I delivered a few days ago in Leuven, to try to elaborate what could be this new policy for migration. And a key point is perhaps to involve and to dialogue with everybody, to take the time on this point to dialogue with the peoples and the different states, and to understand what are the fears and the concerns, in particular for the country which are, because of the geography, the most impacted in the south of Europe by these flus and this migration. So my answer was on some key points, and perhaps to invite everybody to take the time for the European dialogue on this point. On the second question about the transparency and the unity, once again, it's difficult for me to make comments about the way of work for the UK side. But I can just explain you in some details what we have done. With the support of Jean-Claude Juncker and Donald Tusk, I have proposed for the day one to use this method of transparency, which was unusual at European level. That means that we have published every day immediately our position of negotiations on the web. That means that a special group of 27 Brexit delegates, one by government, one by member states, met and still meet in Brussels 1 or 2 days per week. And my team, which is an exceptional team, and in particular my deputy, Sabine Weyand, who is German, met, and Stéphanie Rizzo, meet and have meeting with this group every day or 1 or 2 days per week, saying everything to the 27 member states. That means that each and every prime minister had been able to know exactly what happens in life. And I did the same with the European Parliament, once per week, meeting what we call the Brexit steering group of the Parliament. And in addition, I went once per week, or sometimes twice per week, in the European capitals. I was 3 days ago in Malta, last week also, the same week in Denmark, meeting the Prime Minister, the National Parliament, the unions, and the business community. And thanks to this work, and I have made 3 tours of each capital for the last 2 years. That means that we have built this unity, which isn't given by chance, by this dialogue, this respect, listening to everybody, and to find the common line for the negotiations. I don't want to make any benchmark with the UK method. It's different because UK is a single state. It would be more simple, normally speaking, than working with 27 governments and 27. But we have found this way, and I think that this method, supported by the president of the institutions, could be used in the future for some other challenges, in particular the challenges I mentioned, in particular for migrations. ERG is a group of British politicians and experts on the Tory side, Brexiters, and their main proposal is about Ireland, and to find a way to avoid the backstop and the protocol on Ireland through what they called alternative arrangements. I don't want to speak about somebody winning or losing something. Once again, there is no winner in the Brexit games. But I have listened to these people. I've organized meetings with them 2 times. And we have listened to everybody in the UK side. I've only negotiated with the UK government, but I've listened to everybody for the last 2 years. And my door is open. But to be frank, there is no operational solution now through technology in Ireland. In Ireland, we need to implement operational controls for any goods or animals entering from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. And for the moment, I don't know how to control, for instance, a cow or a pork entering in Northern Ireland by technology or by drones and by dematerialized means. I have been the French Minister for Agriculture, so I know that what we call the SPS controls are key, because Ireland is, once again, a unique epidemiological zone, and any animals entering in UK, Northern Ireland, is entering in the German market, in the French market, immediately. That means that we can't take any risk. We need to control. And for the moment, I don't know how to control an animal, live animal, by technology. We have to implement this control in a very specific place and with, if I may, traditional means. So that is the point. I'm ready to work. And we are immediately ready to work on this issue of the alternative arrangements. But we need time. We need time. And we what? Yes, I'm speaking about technological means. I'm speaking of dematerialized controls. It's true for part of the controls, but not for all the controls we need to implement to protect your market, to protect you as citizens, consumers, or business. That is the key point. Huh? So I'm ready to work, but we are not yet the operational answers. And we need time. The reason why we are ready to work during the 2 next years or 4 years of transition to find the issue, to find the outcomes. Huh? I'm ready. But we have to be serious. And unless we find these solutions, we need the backstop. Huh? We need the backstop. The backstop is simply an insurance to avoid, in any case, in any circumstances, to be obliged to rebuild a border. Huh? We cannot rebuild a border in UK, in Ireland. Huh?
So, yeah, thank you very much. I think that response showed that the devil is really in the details, and it also shows that, and coming to your question, people promoting Brexit very often had, except from the gut feeling of we need whatever independence, no real idea of what it could actually look like. A quick question about the organization. We had aimed at 8 o'clock, but we started a bit late. Could we have a few more questions from the audience?
Yes. We can spend the night if we want. Huh?
Right. Thank you. So, by the way, I should also...
No, I have to leave in a few minutes. It's okay. But, I have to leave in a few minutes, but we can take some more questions.
We can have questions, but... So, quick questions, quick answers then. Please. Oh, there's a gentleman with a black sweater in the middle, somewhere there.
Where's the micro?
Yeah, it's coming. And in the meantime...
It's okay.
Second microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Nicolas. You had a slide where you mentioned that there were no big tech companies in Europe, or at least not in the top 15 or top 20. What measures can the European Union take to foster the growth of such companies and close the gap with the US and China?
Thank you. That's a question here.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'd like to build a little bit on the identity question, and also because Mr. Barnier kept on repeating that people, Europe is about people. There's some ideas, I'm a European activist, and we always develop ideas with the people that we support. And some ideas around identity would be, why not bring in every school curriculum across all the 27 countries, also European history and European culture, and not only the national history and the national culture. You start already at a school age of developing an identity. You can also come up with a Erasmus program for non-academics and have exchange programs. There's a lot of ideas which are circulating, but I think you're absolutely correct about the identity. That's absolutely fundamental to develop a strong Europe in the future, whether it's going to be a Europe of independent states or not.
Thank you. Maybe we go with these questions and looking forward to the answers.
Once again, if I can ask to you to come back to this speech and perhaps my previous speech, which are on the web, in particular my speech delivered last week in Leuven, the University of Leuven. I elaborate what could be the way to rebuild where we have lost the game, companies at the level of the worldwide challenges. Not only in the technological sector. We have many tools linked to our trade policy, our competition policy, our standards and norms regulation policy, and also our capacity to invest together. Once again, despite the fact I am French, I am not protectionist. I think that the right protection is not the protectionism. The right protection is to invest together. To invest together. And it is, in my view, the first answer to your question. Not the only one. We can use our tools, the toolbox of the EU, which is strong and efficient. But the first answer is to invest together. This is the reason why I will be in favor to prolong and to amplify the Juncker plan. Thanks to the Juncker plan, we have invested more or less today, 4 years after the launch of this plan, 500 billion euros. And I think we can not only prolong but amplify this common investment and focusing this investment in the key sector, the green energy, the green industry, and also in artificial intelligence and some other sectors. What is my feeling and my goal, and my proposals. Finally, the identity. Once again, it comes with identity as we can speak about the citizenship or the sovereignty. I think the European identity, the European sovereignty, the European citizenship will come and comes in addition to the national identity, to the national sovereignty, to the national citizenship. Don't make together the mistake to think and to say that we can push back and aside the national identities, culture, traditions. We have to respect it. It's key to keep the citizens on board, or to regain the confidence and the trust of the citizens. But saying that, clearly, we have to respect, the EU have to respect the national and sometimes regional identity, languages, traditions, culture. If we say that first, I think you are right. We must and we have to work on what could be, in addition, a European identity, European sovereignty, European citizenship. And the main tool for the European identity is clearly culture and education. And we have one good example, which is Erasmus, which is the main success for the EU. It cannot be the only one. The point on this sector is that until now, the national governments have been always reluctant to have a European policy for education. And there is no competence at the European level. The only way to work is to cooperate. The only strong point is Erasmus. But there is no, until now, real wish or will to create a European competence. So we have to cooperate. But I think even through cooperation, we can go further. And I think that a part of the new investment plan must be put by priority on training, youth, culture, and education, on the side of what we can do for the technological challenges. I agree with you, and not only with Erasmus. But take into account the fact that there is some reluctance to pull the education policies for the moment. And the point.
Maybe we have time for one more quick question.
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
So, what can we do to accelerate change in the EU? Because, for example, President Macron has made some concrete suggestions for the EU, but there have not been many reactions. And I think many people believe that EU got stuck at the status quo. So, what can we do to make things change?
Well, first of all, I'm personally very pleased that the president of my country is not only young, but also European. I think it's good news for France and good news for Europe too. Second point, I think it's important and positive that the French president, but also the German chancellor, And many other leaders, the Prime Minister of Belgium or the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and some other, takes regularly the floor to make proposal and to put proposal on the table. So that creates debate, and the right time for this debate is now, through the European elections. That is why, in my personal capacity as an engaged citizen, I have decided to take the floor and to tell you, and to, as I did today, to tell you what I think. But please, take the floor. Take the floor. Take part of the campaign. Ask the candidates. Push them to tell what they think and what they want to do, to take some commitments. Take the floor. Once again, you have to be involved in politics. If you don't are involved in politics as citizens, it's politics that managed you. You have to be actor. And I always work in that sense. When I was 21 or 22, I just have my diploma of, I'm sorry for HEC, but from Subdeco Paris at that time, in 72, I did not ask the permission to be candidate for the first time and to be elected by the citizens in one of the most beautiful part of France, which is the Val d'Isère and many ski resorts regions. So but take the floor and don't ask the permission, please.
Okay. Oh. Thank you. This is a clear and a very good message to Anton, I think. Take the floor. So and don't leave it to the populists.
Please, if I may say a last word, if I may. Don't want to stay all the night, but I can tell. The pity for this negotiation is, once again, that it is a negative negotiation. And for me, politics is not about negative issue. Politics is about building progress for the peoples, thanks common goods, common policy, common projects. I have a long experience, which is very important in my view personally, because as you probably know, I spent 10 years of my life on a very unusual project for a politician, which was to organize the Winter Olympics.
Organizing what?
To organize the Winter Olympics in my region. I was the chairman, the co-chairman with Jean-Claude Killy of the Winter Olympics in '92. The executive chairman of the organizing committee of the Winter Olympics. The last games in France, before the Paris game in a few years. And creating and building Olympics is a positive project. And it is clearly for me, what is politics? Politics is to use your convictions, your values, the mandate given by the citizens, the money you have to manage in the name of the taxpayers, all the taxpayers, laws, regulations, directives, for what? To create a collective progress for the people. A collective progress. I don't know if it's the right word in English. Progress. The politics is about creating collective progress. It is the reason why it's not the reality for the Brexit. But I just mentioned the Olympic Games. I spent 10 years of my life for 16 days. It's a good training for the Brexit.
Thank you for this. This is a very good picture, thinking of politics of building something new. And we understand, but also we appreciate, and on behalf of Europe, we appreciate your work for also getting the not-so-happy things done, namely Brexit. Two positive notes to add.
So
I prefer should not add them. Good. Given time restrictions.
It's time to end.
It is time to end, and we have a little thank you that the deans would like to hand you.
Okay, I'm ready.
We just heard that you are not alumni of TUM and not as of HEC as well.
I'm sorry for that.
But
I'm very sorry.
At least you now get something that is even more valuable than any alumni of our two institutions get, and we just want to hand over that to you with a big thank you. It was really an incredible presentation. Thanks.
It's a weight of responsibilities.
Thank you much.
It's
I will.
Thank you very much, and best wishes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much.
I can make a promise to you, to all of you. I will put on my table to safeguard and to protect the withdrawal agreement very carefully. And once again, thank you very much for your invitation, for your kind words. Thank you very much for your long attention. I'm sorry to be a little bit long. Once again, Mr. Chirowski, and to all of you, take the floor and take care of Europe. Thank you very much.
Just a few words, few closing remarks. I want to say a few words of thanks. Thanks to the panelists for joining and for asking your questions. Thanks to guests and friends from HEC for making this possible with us. And very warm thanks to the local organizers, to Claudia Feringo, Olga Hein, who is not local. So the organizers, Olga Hein from HEC, Ute Helfers and Sarah Kowalski. Thank you so much.